what's on trial here, what the issue is here, is what Lindsay Clancy did the night of January 24th, 2023.
Lindsay Clancy, the mom at the center of a brutal murder trial, may soon find out how the jury judged her actions and the consequences for the deaths of her 3 young children, because attorneys for the Commonwealth and Clancy went head-to-head in a Massachusetts courtroom today, laying out their closing arguments.
How does this turn into this? Because of the damn medicine and the lousy medical care that she got.
So was Lindsay Clancy out of her mind when she allegedly strangled her children, or did she kill them in cold blood?
The issue is whether, at the time she killed Cora, Dawson, and Callie, she knew the difference between right and wrong.
At 5:33 on the evening of January 24, 2023, Lindsay Clancy's phone rings. She's standing at the fridge, she'll later say, pulling out chicken nuggets to feed her kids. On the other end is her therapist. The call lasts minutes. And by the time it ends, prosecutors say 3 children are already dead in the basement below her. That single phone call, mundane, ordinary, the kind you'd forget by morning, has become the fault line of an entire murder trial. Because if Lindsay Clancy could hold a conversation, track a timeline, and lie about what she was doing at that exact moment, then the defense's entire theory collapses. This is the piece of evidence prosecutors believe proves she knew exactly what she was doing, and it might be the thing that convicts her. Lindsay Clancy is a labor and delivery nurse from Duxbury, Massachusetts, a mother of 3. 8-month Kyle, 3-year-old Dawson, 5-year-old Cora. By all outward appearances, a woman who had built a life most people would envy, a supportive husband, financial stability, a home in a quiet suburb.
We're here. After just over a month, 5 weeks, we are here at closing arguments in the Lindsay Clancy murder trial out in Massachusetts. This is big because there is little doubt that this mother killed her 3 young children, 8-month-old Callan, 3-year-old Dawson, 5-year-old Cora, by strangling them to death with exercise bands. That's not really the question. The question is whether she is criminally responsible.
On the night of January 24th, all 3 of her children were strangled with exercise resistance bands. Clancy was found badly injured beneath their bedroom window, having apparently attempted to take her own life. She survived. Her children did not. The case has never been about whether Lindsay Clancy killed her children. Nobody disputes that. The question the jury has to answer is narrower and far more complicated. Did she understand in that moment that what she was doing was wrong? Massachusetts law calls this criminal responsibility.
Now, this is first-degree murder for each child, okay? 2 theories. 1, a murder committed with deliberate premeditation, meaning she caused the children's deaths. She intended to kill them. She consciously and purposefully caused the deaths and decided to kill after a period of reflection. Theory 2 of first-degree murder. Murder committed with extreme atrocity or cruelty. Now, what does that mean? Well, it basically means that she caused their deaths, she intended to kill them, or she intended to cause grievous bodily harm, or intended to do an act in which a reasonable person, the circumstances would be that a reasonable person would know that death would result. And that the killings are especially heinous or atrocious or cruel because you think about the circumstances by which these kids were killed, but also that their mother allegedly did that. So that's 2 different theories for first.
If a mental disease or defect strips a person of the capacity to know right from wrong or to control their actions according to the law, they can be found not guilty by reason of insanity.
That Lindsay Clancy, to be found guilty of any of this, the prosecution has to prove that the defendant was criminally responsible. And that is the key throughout this whole trial because of what the defense has been arguing. This postpartum psychosis, insanity defense, that she's not criminally responsible due to a mental disease or defect, and as a result, she lacked the capacity to appreciate her criminality or wrongfulness of her actions, or she couldn't conform her conduct to the requirements of the law. That it doesn't have to fit into a specific medical diagnosis. This is more of a legal consideration. The Commonwealth has to prove that she knew and understand that her conduct was illegal or wrong. And the judge informed the jury.
Clancy's defense has built its entire case around one diagnosis, postpartum psychosis. A break from reality so severe, they argue, that she was essentially a passenger in her own body, compelled by delusions and voices she could not resist.
How? Because of the damn medicine and the lousy medical care that she got. You can troop as many paid experts as you want to come in here and tell a jury, oh, well, she didn't say that she heard voices inside her head. She said she heard voices from outside her head. She said she was making chicken McNuggets. There was a bowl on the sofa. She wasn't making chicken McNuggets. She said something as I think and I muse and I try real hard to tell you what my opinion is, that this woman was acting in her right mind when these children were killed.
The prosecution isn't buying
Commonwealth's
it.
turn. And you had Assistant DA Jennifer Sprague step up to the podium, and she actually agreed with the defense on one thing. There's no dispute that Lindsay Clancy was having a problem, that there was a mental illness, but she said that's not the issue here.
There's no dispute that Lindsay Clancy was suffering from mental illness and that she tried to kill herself. There's no dispute about that. All of the evidence that you've heard, even the experts that the Commonwealth put before you, say that she was suffering from mental illness and she tried to kill herself. That's not the issue in this trial. The issue is whether, at the time she killed Cora, Dawson, and Callie, she knew the difference between right and wrong, and whether she could conform her behavior to the requirements of the law.
And they've built their rebuttal around minutes, not months. The final hours of January 24th, reconstructed almost frame by frame from cell phone records, search histories, and text messages. This is where the phone call comes in.
What's on trial here, what the issue is here, is what Lindsay Clancy did the night of January 24th, 2023, and what her mental state was at the time. And you can use her psychological history and records, the treatment records, to look at both before and
According
after.
to prosecutors, Clancy told her treating psychiatrist that she was at the refrigerator preparing chicken nuggets for her kids when this call came in. It's a small, human, forgettable detail, exactly the kind of thing you'd expect someone to say if it were true. Except her husband, Patrick, testified that when he left the house that evening, his son Dawson was already sitting on the couch eating chicken nuggets and green beans out of a bowl. Investigators photographed 2 bowls on that couch. The timeline doesn't line up.
Patrick wouldn't know what the kids were eating. She was the one that would cook their dinner. She was in the refrigerator, but the guy yesterday is like, oh no. Patrick said that the child was eating the chicken McNuggets in the bowl. No. She was getting food out for the 2 kids, not the little baby, 2 kids for dinner.
And prosecutors argue that's not a coincidence. It's a fabrication, one small lie stitched into a story to explain away a call that shouldn't have been possible if her account of that night were true.
He left.
And she went on to explain more about why the defense's argument, this idea of a voice compelling Lindsay Clancy to kill her children and then herself, why this doesn't add up.
Now, defense wants you to believe that it was after the phone call. That after the phone call, she heard the voice and killed the children. But there's a few things about that don't make sense. First is what she told Dr. Satoff, that when she gets the call, she's at the fridge getting chicken nuggets out of the fridge to make dinner. You heard from Patrick, when he's leaving, Dawson is sitting on the couch eating chicken nuggets and green beans out of a bowl.
Because here's the problem for the defense.
Because if she's already killed the kids because of a voice and being compelled and it being against her will and she's like a puppet, then she can't get a call and miss it and then call the person back and have a conversation and then hang up. A puppet can't do those things. Those are decisions and choices and actions that she's controlling. So she has to explain away the phone call because her behavior and her ability to have the phone call don't make sense if she's being compelled by her voice, if she's not in control.
If Lindsay Clancy was in the grip of psychosis, if she was being compelled by an external force she couldn't control, how does a person in that state receive a phone call, miss it, call the person back, carry on a coherent conversation, and hang up? That's not the behavior of what prosecutors bluntly call a puppet. Those are decisions, choices. Actions requiring memory, timing, and self-control. The very capacities the insanity defense claims were gone.
When she told her mother.
Putting the impetus, the fault, the responsibility on Lindsay Clancy. And Sprague then turned to Lindsay Clancy's own words and actions and how important it was as a nurse to be honest with her providers, her medical health providers, but that she wasn't.
She knows as a nurse the importance of following the instructions of your medications. She knows how important it is to follow the plan and do what's on the bottle and do what your provider tells you and to give that accurate information to your provider. She didn't say, I went up to 50 too early. Maybe they could have adjusted that and tried the 25 milligram for longer and eased her into it. But no, she told her that she did what she was told and then went up and had these problems.
And the call doesn't exist in isolation.
At about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. When this is on her phone, you can see her search for Miralax, kids Miralax at 4:02. And then a little while later at 4:13, you see her search for takeout from 3V. And then immediately after, she does the Apple Maps search to see how long it takes to get to 3V.
Prosecutors have laid out what they call a timeline of planning stretching back hours before the murders. At 14:02 p.m., a search on Clancy's phone for children's Miralax. At 40:13, a search for takeout from a restaurant called 3V. Immediately after, an Apple Maps search for how long it would take to get there. Not because she didn't know the restaurant. She'd lived in the area for years and eaten there multiple times before. Prosecutors argue she needed to know exactly how long her husband would be gone because she needed a window of time to do what she had already decided to do.
Well, defense wants you to believe that, she was checking that because she didn't want him gone for too long. She wanted him home. She was in distress. If you're in distress, don't send him anywhere. Make food at home, have him cook, get delivery, get DoorDash. Go to one of the other restaurants that Patrick mentioned that were 2 minutes down the road. And she didn't have to look up on Apple Maps to see where this restaurant was. You heard from Patrick. They had been there at least 3 times in the months before. She had lived in that area for 4 years. She knew where it was. She knew generally how long it would take to get there. What she needed to know was how long specifically on that night it would take to get there. Because she knew she would have a limited amount of time to do what she wanted to do. And what she had decided to do was to kill the children and then kill herself.
Then come the calls to CVS, not just a search, an actual phone call, asking whether the store carried certain medications and confirming they were in stock. Prosecutors say this wasn't panic. It was logistics. She was extending her husband's errand, adding a stop, buying herself more uninterrupted time at home.
She then brought up another key point, the calls to CVS.
And not only does she search CVS, she calls them and asks them if they have kids Miralax, and they say no, but they have Pedialax and one other medication. And then she asks, is it in stock? Because she needs to know not only what they have, but is it in stock? Because she's adding to this errand that she's sending Patrick out on. And she has to make sure she's not interrupted. She doesn't want that call at 5:33. She wants him to go to CVS and have the medication there and get it and then go on to 3V so she has time to do what she needs to do. So that's why she's calling to see what they have and make sure it's in stock. It's a level of planning there and thinking and decision-making that Dr. Satoff referenced.
Every one of these actions, they argue, points to a woman executing a plan, not a woman in the grip of an uncontrollable delusion. And then Patrick comes home. The house is silent, the kind of silent a home with 3 small children should never be.
Then there was this really important moment where Sprague walked the jury through what happened when Patrick Clancy came home. Highlighted a point that is very important for the prosecution's argument, that this was not someone in a psychosis. It was someone who made choices.
And then comes home. And when he gets home, puts the things on the counter, and it's quiet. It's quiet in a way that a house with 3 kids under 5 should not be during waking hours. So he calls out to them, no answer. He goes to the basement door and opens it and yells down, and no answer. And he closes the door. He calls her phone, no answer. He goes upstairs and is able to unlock the door and see the blood and see the window open and go down to her. And when he goes down to her, she's no longer actively bleeding. He doesn't have to put pressure on any of her wounds. And he
calls out, no answer. He checks the basement, calls again, no answer. He goes upstairs, finds the blood, finds the open window, finds his wife on the ground outside, no longer bleeding. He asks her what she did. Her answer, prosecutors say, wasn't confusion. It wasn't a description of hearing a voice, of being compelled against her will. It was, I tried to kill myself. And then the kids are in the basement. Not go help them. Not they're hurt. Just a statement of fact delivered in order as if she were reciting a checklist.
And he says to her, what did you do? And her response is, I tried to kill myself. And then it's, where are the kids? In the basement. It's not, I heard a voice. I was compelled to do this. I didn't want to do this. Go help the kids. They're hurt. They're in the basement. Go save them. No. I tried to kill myself, and the kids are in the basement. You know from all of the evidence that you have.
The defense sees an entirely different woman in that same evidence.
Meditated, intentional, conscious killings. And Reddington then walked the jury through Lindsay Clancy's writings, journals, showing these entries that were made in November and December where she documented her horrible, intrusive thoughts, lack of motivation. And then he pointed to January, right, the month that she allegedly committed these killings, where her notes devolved into like these chicken scratches.
You look in this book, and as you might recall, Ms. Rossi testified, when asked, did you feel that she was being controlling of you? Because she says, for example, Monday, 10:24, Callan, put down for a nap. Hopefully we'll nap for 2 hours. If he wakes shortly, let him resettle himself. Bottle when he wakes up. Then it goes on and on. Make salad, romaine lettuce. He likes peppers, broccoli. Cut the sweet potatoes in chunks. Thank you, with the heart. Another good score. You look at her journals that she took. You'll see, as you go along, in the dates that she's recording in these journals, she's talking about the drugs that she was prescribed. And look at the first page. Look at how detailed. Dates, how she felt, 10 milligrams Prozac, and it goes on like that, goes on through November into December. December 9th, 10th, 11th. Horrible intrusive thoughts. Horrible thoughts in the AM. Horrible thoughts. Horrible thoughts. No motivation. And then finally, horrible thoughts, no motivation, deeply depressed. Then, that's around the time she went to Women and Infants Hospital, right? Looking for help. Look at this. As she runs into January, there's nothing other than little chicken scratches because her mind was gone.
He then brought up an interesting analogy. He pointed to the movie The Shining, comparing Clancy's desperate Googling to Jack Nicholson's character typing all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
They point to a nurse who spent months begging a broken system for help, who called suicide hotlines and was turned away, who researched medications late into the night not out of calculation but out of desperation to feel like herself again. They point to journal entries that deteriorate from careful, loving notes about her children's naps and meals into what her attorney called chicken scratches by January. Proof, they argue, that her mind was unraveling in real time. They argue the phone call proves nothing except that a woman in psychosis can still function on autopilot the same way anyone can drive home and not remember the drive. But prosecutors are asking the jury to focus on something simpler than competing psychiatric theories: behavior.
First, there's the birthday party. She's throwing the birthday party. She's monitoring the kids, making sure, typical mom birthday party stuff. Everyone's eating, getting cake, singing happy birthday. You saw her in the video. She appeared happy and smiling, normal. Everyone that interacted with her said, seemed a little tired, but okay.
Wow.
The Museum of Science. You have that video. The Museum of Science in Boston can be crowded and overwhelming on a good day. And she's there with 3 kids under 5 with her husband. You see her monitoring them, caring for them, doing the exhibits, showing them what to do with the exhibits. If you watched that video and you didn't know who the Clancy family was, and we asked you, pick out the woman who is depressed, pick out the woman who wants to kill herself, pick out the woman who's about to kill her kids, you couldn't pick her out. She's completely calm. All her behaviors are typical and normal because she's able to control her behavior.
A woman who drove to a pediatrician's appointment that morning and interacted normally with a doctor trained to spot postpartum depression. A woman who sent her husband photos that afternoon insisting she was having a good day. A woman who hours before killing her children was thinking clearly enough to manage a phone call, a takeout order, and a pharmacy run, and then lied about what she was doing during the one call that mattered most. That's the case prosecutors are asking the jury to see.
And then, finally, she got to the why. Why would Lindsay Clancy, a mother, do this to her kids?
So why did she specifically do it? She was depressed. She was exhausted. She was done. She didn't want to try anymore. She felt damaged. But those kids were her protective factor. Those kids were keeping her from ending her misery. And so she had to remove the protective factor. And I'm not saying she was happy about it. I'm saying that it was what she had to do to end her misery. But it was a choice. It was a choice. She could have kept trying. She could have, moved down to her mother's. She could have killed herself and left her kids alive. But it was a choice to take them with her. It was a horrible choice.